What on earth are you doing here, worm?
Recently, Cassis observed some peculiar streaks that, after almost 20 years, have changed colour. Cassis is a fairly recent experiment, but Mars has always attracted our attention, and there have been a lot of previous missions. This colour stereo camera is a Swiss-led experiment and was built at the University of Bern in Switzerland. It was selected to be part of the Trace Gas Orbiter mission. The instrument was launched on the 14th of March 2016 from Baikonur towards the Red Planet. After a 7-month journey through interplanetary space, 1.5 years was still needed to reach the final orbit. And on the 21st of April 2018, Cassis started its prime mission. Since that time, Cassis has collected and sent to Earth more than 25,000 remarkable images of the Martian landscape. So let's try to figure out what these chameleon-like structures are. 20 years ago, the Mars Orbiter camera imaged the streaks, and they were dark. Now, at the time of Cassis observations, they're bright. Searching the planet in detail, we can find more chameleon-like structures. But here, there's something different. These lines are also bright, but here they lie on a smooth surface, not a steep slope. The structures look like someone has swept the surface with a broom. This could easily be the wind. But can wind really move material? If we look for more evidence for the action of wind, we should definitely look at dune structures, like this. Here, there are long diffuse tails coming out of these dunes. And in this example, we get an impression that dunes are actually climbing upslope. To find similar features on Earth, let's visit a dry and sandy desert. Dunes are produced by wind. In poorly inhabited areas with little vegetation, the dunes can become beautifully smooth. The winds in desert areas can be so fierce that you need to shelter from the moving sand. With a very strong wind, sand can even move upslope. That's exactly as we found in Cassis images on Mars. So it seems that on Mars, despite the rarefied atmosphere, the wind is more than strong enough to displace material. The basaltic origin of dunes makes them appear dark blue in Cassis images. But what are these bright tails behind them? If you put an obstacle into the wind, there's a calm zone created behind that obstacle. It's seems that smaller, brighter dust settles down and deposits in that zone behind the dunes. Neither these stagnant areas nor the wind streaks are as long as our chameleon-like streaks. So it seems that winds are not obviously linked to these slope streaks. The processes forming them seem to be different. Slope streaks are connected to dust, and in certain regions of Mars, well, they're everywhere. The map shows that they're predominantly found in the equatorial regions. And wind and dust brings us back to dust devils. Off-piste skiers will recognize a relationship here to the production of avalanches. Even the weight of one skier can be sufficient to trigger an avalanche. One only needs to change the structure slightly, and the snow load on a slope becomes bigger than its strength. The snow layer starts to slide down the slope, initiating the avalanche. A big avalanche takes a lot of material down the slope, creating a giant cloud and leaving a deep track behind it. But how do we search for similar effects on Mars?
Hey Nick, why not look at some really high-resolution images from our high-rise camera?
Hey, Alfred! That's a great idea. High-rise images objects down to 1 meter in size from an altitude 300 kilometers above the surface of Mars. This dark line looks like the edge of a deep slope streak. And in these high-rise images, we can see a track that seems to have started a chain reaction by initiating the production of slope streaks. However, the influence of the dust devils on the production of slope streaks is more an exception than a rule. If slope streaks really are dust avalanches going down the dusty slopes and exposing some dark underlying material, then any triggering event, such as a small meteorite impact or even an extra speck of dust, is enough to provoke an avalanche. But why do these dark streaks change color with age? To try to understand this, let's experiment. We need to prepare analogues of the Martian surface with different grain sizes and different material compaction. And then, let's look at the reflection properties and how they vary. Surprisingly, a compressed and fine-grained surface looks brighter than a surface made of large grains. It's possible that the harsh Martian environment acts to split newly exposed particles, producing fine-grained surfaces. Alternatively, fine-grained material might sediment out of the atmosphere to brighten the surface. Actually, we don't quite understand it yet. Although Mars is definitely a different world, sometimes Cassis can show us things that are very familiar to us on Earth.
Hola y bienvenido a la segunda parte de mi videolog. Yo soy el astronauta europeo Matthias Maurer. Hoy os quiero explicar cómo nosotros los astronautas nos preparamos para trabajar fuera de la estación espacial en el traje espacial. Lo más cercano a la ingravidez es el entrenamiento bajo el agua, como bucear. Por lo tanto, la NASA ha construido una copia de los módulos de la Estación Espacial Internacional en tamaño original en una enorme piscina que contiene casi 25 millones de litros de agua. El día de entrenamiento comienza muy temprano para mí. Me levanto a las 5 de la mañana y tomo un muy bien desayuno para tener energía para el largo y agotador día. Alrededor de las 6 salgo de casa para llegar antes de las 6:30. Antes de empezar el entrenamiento, tenemos que preparar todas las herramientas que necesitamos para nuestra tarea de 6 horas bajo el agua. Si te olvidas de las herramientas o si no funcionan correctamente, tendrás un problema bajo el agua o más tarde en el vacío del espacio. Por lo tanto, revisamos todo junto con nuestros entrenadores e incluso repetimos el uso correcto del destornillador inalámbrico calificado para el espacio, que cuesta más que un coche pequeño, por cierto. Hoy entreno con mi colega astronauta de la NASA, Kayla. El traje en sí mismo es muy robusto y pesado y muy complejo. Consiste en un par de pantalones con botas en los que nos ponemos primero. Luego nos deslizamos en el torso. Sin ninguna ayuda, nunca podría ponerme el traje yo solo. Por lo tanto, recibimos mucho apoyo durante nuestro entrenamiento de muchos expertos. La NASA tiene técnicos especializados en el traje, en las herramientas, en las instalaciones bajo y afuera del agua, buceadores especializados y instructores de formación. Todo está estrictamente monitoreado y controlado para que los astronautas podamos entrenar con seguridad. Ahora sigue la gorra con auriculares y micrófonos, luego los guantes y finalmente el casco. Completamente sellado, el traje está inflado y presurizado. Luego se colocan las herramientas. Una vez en el espacio, los astronautas debemos ser capaces de arreglárnoslas solos con el traje. A las 9 nos sumergimos finalmente. Ponen a Kayla y a mí por una grúa en la piscina. Junto con el traje peso fácilmente 200 kilos, demasiado para saltar directamente al agua. Dentro del agua, los buceadores ya me están esperando. Frente a mí se encuentra la estación espacial en tamaño completo. Ahora casi me siento como si estuviera en el espacio. En mi mente vuelvo a caminar a través del procedimiento de entrenamiento de hoy. Hoy, una bomba defectuosa debe ser removida y reemplazada. Para no perderme en el espacio, siempre estoy atado a la estación por cuerdas de seguridad. Trabajar en ingravidez también funciona mejor si tienes los pies en una atadura, como en los esquí. Aquí tengo que engancharme ciegamente con mis botas. No es una tarea fácil. Luego tomo el destornillador inalámbrico y aflojo los tornillos, como si fuera un manitas en casa. Pero en el espacio todo toma mucho más tiempo y tiene que ser atado para evitar perder los objetos que luego se conviertan en una peligrosa basura espacial. Después de la bomba, intercambiamos un sistema de cámaras. Kayla está en el brazo robótico y yo la entrego las piezas de repuesto. Cuando surgen problemas, debemos ser capaces de confiar en el otro a ciegas, porque solo estamos nosotros dos ahí fuera en el espacio. Por eso también practicamos el rescate de uno al otro. En secreto, el instructor me susurra por radio en el oído que debo fingir estar inconsciente. Kayla ahora tiene que darse cuenta de esto, aunque no pueda verme, y luego me lleva de vuelta a salvo a la estación dentro de media hora. Tal rescate es increíblemente agotador y le quita al rescatador casi todas las fuerzas que le quedan. Yo, al ser rescatado y pretender estar inconsciente, sin embargo disfruto de este corto descanso e intento relajarme lo mejor posible, porque yo sé exactamente que el día de entrenamiento no terminará sin que yo también tenga que hacer un rescate. Al final, ambos completamos todas nuestras tareas y alrededor de las 3 de la tarde estamos de vuelta en la parte superior de la piscina. Ahora una rápida ducha caliente y luego a la reunión de evaluación con los instructores. Durante todo el recorrido nos vigilaron de cerca a través de muchas cámaras. Captan cualquier error que cometamos y ahora nos dan información muy valiosa. Y mañana será otro día normal de entrenamiento. Pero eso ya es tema para un nuevo clip. Adiós.
Hola y bienvenidos a Space desde la Camarga, en el sur de Francia, una región famosa por sus paisajes y su vida salvaje, pero también un lugar seriamente amenazado por el cambio climático debido a la subida del nivel del mar. Los científicos están usando satélites para entender mejor qué está ocurriendo en lugares como este y alrededor de todo el planeta. Vamos a descubrir más. Estos muros de contención de la costa de la Camarga se construyeron en 1980 en un intento fallido de retener el avance del mar Mediterráneo. Por aquel entonces el nivel del mar aumentaba solo unos milímetros al año. Ahora los satélites han registrado un crecimiento mucho más rápido debido al calentamiento del agua y el derretimiento del hielo.
Las imágenes que tenemos estos últimos años provienen de satélites que miden el nivel del agua. Nos muestran que este aumento es incluso mayor que el de las cifras que teníamos antes. Estamos hablando de unos 4,8 milímetros por año, lo que es muy alarmante en comparación con cifras anteriores, que rondaban los 3,4 milímetros anuales.
Los científicos Anis Guilmamy y Jean Jalbert han dedicado sus carreras a estudiar humedales bajos como la Camarga. Los últimos 2 años han vivido una sequía prolongada y en los últimos 20 la temperatura media ha aumentado en 1 grado. Los cambios que han observado son sutiles pero significativos.
La Camarga es un delta, así que es una estructura geológica muy joven, de tan solo 10 o 12.000 años, constituida por sedimentos finos. Este sedimento comienza a hundirse por su propio peso y la Camarga pierde aproximadamente 1 milímetro de altura cada año, mientras que el océano aumenta. El nivel del mar puede subir 1 o incluso 2 metros al final de este siglo, y cuando piensas que la Camarga está aproximadamente a 1 metro sobre el agua, puedes imaginar las consecuencias de un aumento como este.
ANIS trabaja cuantificando los cambios en la costa del Mediterráneo utilizando satélites Sentinel europeos y Landsat de la NASA. Ha descubierto que el mar Mediterráneo se ha comido 200 metros de costa de la Camarga en 30 años.
Aquí podéis ver imágenes de la costa en 1988. Es una imagen del Landsat 5. Si comparas esta con las del Sentinel 2 de 2018, podéis ver cómo la costa se retrae y el océano avanza en detrimento de hábitats como la playa o las dunas.
Los satélites son ahora la herramienta fundamental de los científicos para estudiar el cambio climático y el medio ambiente. Satélites Sentinels y Earth Explorers monitorizan el hielo, observan la deforestación, el uso de la tierra, la humedad del suelo, siguen las tendencias en el aumento del nivel del mar, su temperatura y salinidad, e incluso las emisiones de las ciudades. Los datos se coordinan desde la Agencia de Observación de la Tierra en Roma, Italia. La Agencia Espacial Europea tiene 4 satélites Earth Explorer y 7 Sentinels en órbita, con los Sentinels volando en pareja para maximizar la recopilación de datos.
Debido a que tenemos a la pareja de Sentinel 2A y 2B volando a la vez, hemos elegido órbitas con las que puedan obtener el mejor resultado. Así que básicamente pueden cubrir toda la superficie de la Tierra en 5 días sin dejar un solo hueco. La frecuencia y la coherencia son muy importantes para la gestión de nuestro medio ambiente y para dar la clave del cambio a los responsables de tomar decisiones y advertirles de las prácticas que la humanidad debe empezar a cambiar.
Los satélites también perciben el aumento del CO2 en la atmósfera, niveles que siempre han variado, pero que ahora están más altos que nunca. Volvemos a la Camarga, con quienes estudian y cuidan esta frágil costa y se enfrentan a la realidad del cambio climático. Anaïs Segón dirige la reserva natural en el corazón de este parque natural francés.
La naturaleza es resiliente, sabe cómo adaptarse, pero sabe hacerlo en un sistema con una evolución y en un plazo que no es en absoluto el plazo que tenemos hoy aquí.
Ahora la decisión es no construir más muros en el mar para proteger esta área.
En los espacios naturales de Camarga hemos decidido que no vamos a luchar contra la erosión de la costa, contra los efectos del mar. En vez de eso hemos decidido retirarnos, realizar un repliegue estratégico y adaptarnos en lugar de luchar contra la erosión costera y el aumento del nivel del mar.
La Camarga es solo un ejemplo de lo que está sucediendo. El aumento del nivel del mar en el mundo ha sido de 25 centímetros desde 1900 y se espera que estos niveles aumenten considerablemente el próximo siglo.
Lo que sucede aquí ocurre en todo el planeta y tienes que pensar que aquí hay decenas de miles de personas afectadas. En Francia hay cerca de 740.000 hectáreas, más de 300.000 edificios que están a menos de 1 metro sobre el nivel del mar. A escala planetaria hay más de 370 millones de personas que habitan a menos de 5 metros de altitud. Hay 136 grandes ciudades, Nueva York, Tokio, Osaka, Lagos, que están justo en el agua. Así que tendremos que aprender a resistir en algunas áreas, pero muchas veces retrocediendo o adaptándonos a ese cambio climático y a sus efectos.
Estos cambios y sus efectos seguirán siendo monitorizados por una flota de satélites a 700 kilómetros sobre nuestras cabezas.
Hola y bienvenidos a Space desde la superficie del planeta Marte, o al menos lo más cerca que pueden estar de ella aquí en la Tierra. Hemos viajado hasta el Reino Unido y Bélgica para hablar con los científicos e ingenieros que trabajan en ExoMars, un equipo europeo y ruso cuya misión es ir al planeta rojo y buscar vida. Veamos qué está pasando.
Bruno es un todoterreno diseñado para Marte, un robot con 6 ruedas con una velocidad punta de 2 centímetros por segundo que podrá desplazarse por Marte de forma semiautónoma. Es un prototipo diseñado por los ingenieros de Airbus, encargados de construir el primer vehículo para buscar directamente señales de vida en Marte.
Este prototipo de Bruno es prácticamente idéntico al vehículo de ExoMars que utilizaremos. Posee todos los sensores e interruptores que se usan para conducir el todoterreno de forma autónoma, empezando por estas 2 cámaras en la parte superior del mástil, que permiten una visión en 3D prácticamente idéntica a la humana y una identificación de las rocas y las pendientes que tiene delante para analizar si puede superarlas.
Este será el aspecto final del todoterreno. Su característica principal es que puede perforar la superficie hasta 2 metros de profundidad y procesar las muestras que obtenga en un laboratorio integrado dentro del mismo robot. Su fabricación supone grandes retos, como por ejemplo reinventar la rueda.
Estas ruedas metálicas son una parte importante del sistema de locomoción. No se nos permite usar caucho porque es orgánico y si estamos tratando de detectar vida en Marte no quisiéramos toparnos con algo que nosotros mismos hubiéramos aportado. Así que tenemos que conseguir la misma capacidad de compresión del caucho pero en metal. Y lo hemos logrado con estas ruedas metálicas.
El modelo actual de este vehículo se está construyendo en una sala completamente esterilizada en Stevenage, cerca de Londres. Cada componente, cada instrumento procedente de los laboratorios de ciencias de toda Europa tiene que quedar absolutamente esterilizado para su posterior ensamblaje.
Este pequeño panel que vemos detrás, cuadrado, es donde va a integrarse toda la electrónica del módulo de servicio del rover de ExoMars y, como vemos, todo se integrará en esta sala, diseñada específicamente para la misión de ExoMars. Y si hay vida en Marte, espero que la encontremos con esta misión.
Es imprescindible evitar que cualquier tipo de vida terrestre penetre en Marte, de ahí que las medidas para mantener el vehículo fuera de ese riesgo sean draconianas. Nos hemos enfrentado a muchos desafíos con el fin de mantener las herramientas totalmente limpias, así como todo el equipo de apoyo en tierra, que debe de estar impoluto. Al igual que estas instalaciones, para que los ingenieros electrónicos puedan trabajar en el todoterreno, pero sin que necesiten entrar en esta sala completamente esterilizada. La misión conjunta de la Agencia Espacial Europea y Roscosmos ya ha lanzado una nave espacial con destino al planeta rojo, el ExoMars Trace Gas Orbiter, que despegó en 2016. Está funcionando a pleno rendimiento en órbita desde abril de este año, husmeando la atmósfera en busca de metano e imaginando la superficie en detalle. Después de una serie de reuniones como esta en la oficina de la política científica belga, se ha determinado el lugar de aterrizaje para la segunda misión de ExoMars. Quieren que el todoterreno explore Oxia Planum, una planicie en el ecuador de Marte que es un antiguo lago.
Oxia Planum es uno de los lugares más interesantes para situar un módulo de aterrizaje e investigar. Se puede perforar, tomar muestras y analizar los materiales de la superficie y los del subsuelo. Además, es una zona bastante segura para el aterrizaje porque la superficie también lo es. Está situado en un nivel bajo, así que puede aprovechar la atmósfera para ir bajando y reduciendo la velocidad. Tiene tiempo para reaccionar y responder antes de aterrizar.
El componente ruso de la misión se centra en la plataforma de aterrizaje que llevará el vehículo ExoMars. Irá equipada de instrumentos para medir la atmósfera marciana, aunque su preparación va a contrarreloj.
No cabe duda, el lanzamiento en julio de 2020 es una tarea muy ambiciosa, teniendo en cuenta que el equipamiento científico de la plataforma de aterrizaje está en una fase crítica, ya que su desarrollo comenzó mucho después que el del equipamiento del todoterreno.
Lo que hemos aprendido con esta misión hasta ahora es que Marte es mucho más diverso y dinámico de lo que se esperaba, tal como muestran estas imágenes de la cámara suiza CASIS del ExoMars Trace Gas Orbiter. Además, los científicos de la Agencia Espacial Europea están detectando agua helada bajo la superficie en muchas zonas.
El agua en Marte es, en primer lugar, subterránea. No hemos encontrado lagos a cielo abierto. El agua está congelada. Hay hielo en el subsuelo. Siempre se ha considerado que el agua en su forma líquida es prerequisito para la vida. Eso no significa necesariamente que haya vida allí, pero es un ingrediente necesario para ella.
Nuestra visión de Marte está evolucionando muy rápidamente, pero ¿creen los expertos que ExoMars encontrará señales de vida actual o vestigios de la misma en el pasado?
Sí, naturalmente. Espero que ExoMars encuentre rastros de la existencia de compuestos orgánicos en la superficie de Marte. Esta es la misión para la que fue diseñada.
Contamos con los mejores instrumentos que podemos tener a bordo para detectar si hay vida. Lo más importante es el taladro, que podemos utilizar para acceder a la profundidad en la que pensamos que puede haber vida o pueden hallarse rastros de una vida en el pasado. Y nadie lo ha hecho antes. La misión tiene previsto que el todoterreno ExoMars se desplace 4 kilómetros y perfore hasta 2 metros por debajo de la superficie al menos 6 veces. Y si encuentra algo, ¿cómo será?
Creo que en esta etapa es poco probable que sean hombrecillos verdes. Probablemente se trate de bacterias, porque es lo que se suele encontrar en los lugares más áridos de la Tierra. Las bacterias son la forma de vida más resistente que conocemos, así que es bastante probable que sea este tipo de vida lo que encontremos.
Sabremos más cuando la plataforma del todoterreno ExoMars aterrice en Marte en marzo de 2021.
Seguimos hablando de Marte aquí en Airbus, en Steven H., en nuestra rúbrica Ask Space, en la que tratamos las preguntas que ustedes nos envían sobre el universo y se las planteamos a los expertos. Estoy con Manish Patel de The Open University. Manish, hemos recibido muchas preguntas sobre la exploración de Marte. Una es, ¿cuándo llegarán los humanos a Marte?
Llevamos mucho tiempo planeando ir a Marte con humanos. Llevamos años explorándolo gracias a la robótica. Creo que ha llegado el momento de que vayamos allí con personas. Y esto se ha planteado principalmente debido a proyectos como SpaceX y otras entidades comerciales que han entrado en el mercado y están influyendo en la manera en la que realizamos los lanzamientos, en la que entramos en el espacio y en cómo podemos llegar a Marte. Así que creo que lograremos llevar a gente a Marte en los próximos 20 años. Espero poder verlo.
También hemos recibido preguntas sobre cómo vivirían los humanos en Marte, si podrán estar allí bajo cúpulas, bajo tierra, si tendrán que llevar oxígeno. ¿Qué piensa usted?
Probablemente habrá cúpulas o alguna especie de cabinas en las que podrían estar, como en la estación espacial, pero en la superficie de Marte. Así estarán protegidos de las radiaciones dañinas de las bajas presiones y tendrán una atmósfera respirable. Una de las cosas clave necesarias en Marte es el oxígeno. Sabemos que hay hielo en Marte. Una de las cosas que podemos hacer con él, ya que está formado de hidrógeno y oxígeno, es separar el oxígeno para recolectarlo y usarlo para respirar.
Muchas gracias, Manish, por estas explicaciones. Envíenos sus preguntas sobre el universo usando el hashtag AskSpace y trataremos de responderlas. Siga otras noticias sobre el espacio en euronews.com.
and then the helicopter starts flying sideways. Because the twin blades are not in a natural pressure, because they rotate like this, the helicopter... Felt safer in my life, I'll tell you.
Questo è un esperimento scientifico, questa cosa può sembrare tante cose, però il fatto che non si possa raddrizzare significa che per tante cose il freddo non fa niente.
Però mantiene.
Però mantiene, perché nero è nero. E comunque qua l'acqua è rosa e ghiaccio.
Ma devo ammettere che io trovo queste cose anche un po' spaventose.
Inizialmente aveva trovato questa frattura, vedi queste grosse fratture, 1 e 2, che vanno anche verso di là. L'acqua aveva trovato la frattura e ha cominciato a scavare, e a fondere, ed ha creato questo pozzo.
Buona coppina dove si chiama.
That's fantastic.
Perché queste grotte al contatto sono formate in buona parte, in gran parte proprio da questa circolazione di aria. Adesso è agosto, è molto caldo fuori, quindi l'aria che circola all'interno è caldissima e crea un'alta fusione. Quindi la grotta di per sé ha doppio meccanismo di fusione, l'acqua e la circolazione d'aria.
Let's see how it goes. And that's across. Remove this for not being blown away, and this is our basically infrastructure to mount the camera. So what we have got is a camera that's only kind of a lens that look at it, and a little device that will transmit the data back home, and a little solar panel to provide power to this. Great. And so what will happen is that, now this was set up earlier as well, is this camera will relay us kind of a picture every 20 minutes, by which we will basically, what we are monitoring is the position of this ring relative to the pole. So as the glacier will melt, the ring will go down, and so we can read up how much melt we're going to have. And in a day like this, it could give us, well, 5 to 10 centimeters of melt, maybe not 10. It's not going to be the hottest day on summer, but like in a hot day, a summer day, you get, well, 10 centimeters, this much of melt at this very point, but all across the glacier where we are standing.
My dream has always been to be an astronaut ever since I was in 4th or 5th grade and I learned about the Apollo missions to the moon. You know, the adventure, the sense of exploration involved fascinated me and started this dream of becoming an astronaut. My name's Andreas Mogensen, and I'm the next ESA astronaut to fly to the International Space Station. As I got older, I realized that you can't plan on becoming an astronaut because so few people actually make it. Especially as a European, there's a lot of luck involved. And so I knew I needed a more realistic plan. All right, ESA's European Space Operations Center. And I thought, what better way than to become an aerospace engineer and help to design and build spacecraft, satellites, and then send them into space if I couldn't get sent into space myself. And so I became an aerospace engineer, and I even, before I became an astronaut, applied for a job here at ESA's European Space Operations Center, because this is exactly what has fascinated me and what I've wanted to work with if I couldn't become an astronaut.
Hey Bruno.
Hey Andy.
How are you? Good to see you.
Yeah, nice to see you too.
Today I'm meeting the people responsible for controlling spacecraft in Earth orbit and voyaging far into our solar system.
and who monitor space around us, helping to protect daily life and our satellites from risky space debris and hazardous space weather.
Welcome to the main control room here at ESA.
Thank you. It looks an awful lot like the ISS control room where I work as Capcom, but there's a lot less people here.
Yeah, well, at the moment there's nothing big going on, but this is the room that we use for all the critical phases of our missions. So every time we launch a satellite, every time we arrive at a planet, or every time we land somewhere, this is where the core teams get together. And not only on that day when the critical phase takes place, but months before, we're already in this room training for that day. So a bit like you do when you're going on a mission next. First we go through how would it be if everything went just fine, so that we are used to this timeline of events, what's going to happen when and what to expect. And then he will start injecting failures into the simulator. You go through this routine as well.
It's very similar to what we do, that's right. And it's interesting because a lot of people think that we are just very good at solving problems on the fly, but the truth is we prepare for every possible scenario that we can imagine, so that in case something happens, you know, we've done it before, so that nothing surprises us in real time.
Absolutely, it's exactly like this. This is an historical place. You see here, since 1968, all the way to Sentinel-6, which was launched in 2020. So there's a lot of history that was taking place in this room. A lot of expectations, a lot of happy moments, some sad moments as well. People who invested a lot of work, a lot of years of dedication, and then suddenly they are here waiting for the satellite to come off the rocket and take control, and on the screen and they see a disaster, because yeah, it's part of this business that sometimes...
That's why they say it's rocket science, because it actually is hard sometimes. Yeah.
But it's still exciting every time you reach a new planet. And the first time you see a picture from Mercury, which we had recently with Bepi Colombo, it just flew by Mercury. And I'm going to tell you a secret. Just a few weeks ago, we were actually on a crash course with Mercury.
Oh, really?
Yes, yes. Had we done nothing, the satellite would have crashed. But our flight dynamics, they spotted this well in advance, of course, and prepared maneuvers. And actually, we've passed just a few hundred meters from the point where we had to be to get the best from the planet towards the final destination, which is to come back to Mercury and eventually come into orbit.
Well, thank you so much, Bruno. It's been a pleasure.
Well, it's been a pleasure, and I wish you all the best in your next flight.
Thanks, and I'll see you next time.
See you next time.
Part of my job as an astronaut is to train and be ready to face unexpected and potentially dangerous situations. And the rising threat in the past decades has clearly come from space debris.
And news just coming in, a piece of space junk threatened to crash into the International Space Station, forcing astronauts to seek emergency shelter.
Since the launch of Sputnik back in 1957, almost 14,000 satellites have been placed into orbit. 6,400 of them are currently active. Objects that were launched decades ago and have since broken into fragments are still up there, traveling at vast speeds. An impact with any one of them could destroy or damage a functioning satellite or threaten the International Space Station. We humans are also launching more satellites than ever before. Our skies are getting overcrowded. ESA's space debris team tracks over 36,000 debris objects larger than 10 centimeters. And there are millions of smaller pieces which also pose a real risk of damage.
Hello, Stein. How are you?
Andreas, good morning.
Good morning. What are you working on here?
Well, I'm laying out the overview of various type of small pieces of space debris. If you can have a look at, for example, this sample here, these are the solar cells of the Hubble Space Telescope, where you, on this small piece, which was in orbit for just a couple of years, you can count the impacts due to space debris, and of course they degrade the performance of the solar cells. What we know is that as long as we leave objects up there, they become a risk to be hit by debris, which is already there. And the real problem with this is that it's actually an exponential effect. So one piece of debris, I can, for example, take like a exemplary 1 centimeter ball of aluminium. And this is enough to take out a spacecraft, and this will create thousands of new pieces of debris, which in turn are a risk to what is already flying around there.
Yeah, it has it has an impact even on the lives of us astronauts on board the space station. And so prior to any spacewalks, we are briefed about all the handrails where we know that there have been impacts, because they create sharp edges which can puncture our gloves. And obviously the gloves have to maintain pressure inside the suit.
That's amazing that you have to think about these things actively or proactively even. Recently there was a survey of the entire Columbus module to count all the impacts of space debris that have been collected over the past 10 years. And we do this, first of all, to also understand how much debris is out there, so that we can build effective countermeasures. Yeah, the result of the survey is that we still expect that there's about 130 million pieces smaller than 1 millimeter in orbit.
So one of the ways that we get rid of the trash on board the space station is that we pack our cargo vehicles full of trash, and then we send them back through the Earth's atmosphere without a heat shield, and they burn up, or we say they burn up. How much actually burns up? Does anything reach the Earth?
Yeah. Unfortunately, things do reach the Earth, and sometimes they even get found. We, for example, know of about 80 known events from the last 60 years where one could one-to-one associate the object on ground to a mission in space before.
Has anyone ever been hurt by space debris?
Yeah, so unfortunately we have at least one confirmed incident where a woman was impacted by a piece of insulation from an upper stage. So far, no casualties though.
Okay. How concerned are you about the future? Because a lot of private companies are talking about sending up constellations of satellites, numbering tens of thousands.
I'm not concerned, I'm optimistic, I'm inherently an optimist, but we have to work. So indeed, the space traffic is going up. What goes up must come down, and the scale on which we're doing it is unprecedented, which means that every new platform, every mission we design has to be designed with the sustainability aspects in mind. Think on how to do collision avoidance from start. Think on how to reduce your orbit after your mission is over from the beginning when you're designing your platform. And when you do come down through the atmosphere, think about how you design your satellites to burn up. Now, they're all hard engineering problems, but we have made great progress over the last 5 years, and I would imagine that this kind of dreams of sustainability also in orbit will no longer be a dream in the next 10 years.
Humans need to behave responsibly. We are facing major challenges on Earth, not the least of which is climate change.
Dankeschön. Danke.
But our space environment also needs constant monitoring. Teams working here at ESA in Darmstadt are making sure that our spacecraft are protected from potential damage, including any caused by space weather.
And in further news, an international satellite services firm has lost control of one of its satellites after it was apparently disabled by space weather.
Astronauts like me are on the front row for a stunning show that's the most visible manifestation of space weather, the aurora. When charged particles from the sun interact with Earth's upper atmosphere, they create these colorful displays dancing over our planet. But they need to be monitored and forecasted too. Enter Melanie.
Hey Melanie, how are you? It's good to see you.
Good to see you too.
So Melanie, you're working with space weather at ESA.
Yes, exactly. We work here in ESA in the Space Weather Office to study the activity of our sun, to try to protect our assets in space, on the ground, the astronauts.
Yeah, certainly it's something that we're very aware of on the ISS. As you probably know, all astronauts have to wear a personal radiation monitor, and that the results from that get
calculated into your cumulative sum of exposure, which affects how many missions you can go on, how long you can stay in space, for example. So this is a very interesting topic from our point of view as well.
Yes, clearly the sun is a big contribution to the radiation you do absorb in space. Luckily, on the ISS, we're still protected a bit by our magnetic field. It kind of keeps some of the particles out. But for the really strong events, when the sun is really active, even that cannot fully protect you, and you are exposed to that increased radiation. So it's good you're being monitored for it.
Yeah. I think I was told that my 10 days in space in 2015, during those 10 days, I received the same radiation dose as I would during a full year on Earth. So
indeed. So even if it's just 400 kilometers, the atmosphere here really helps in addition, because it lets the radiation be absorbed in a way. Yeah. But if you go to the moon or even further eventually, you leave our protective area, and indeed you're much more exposed to the radiation out there. So it's really more critical to know what the activity is. If there's a solar particle event coming, you really want to know so that you can go into extra protected and shielded areas.
I mean, that's obviously the biological effects, but we're also interested in space weather and its effects on satellites.
Yes, clearly. In the same way the radiation can damage our cells in the human, it can damage electronics on our satellites in space. It can lead to charging, and the discharging then damages it. But it goes all the way from the satellites that we use to our ground systems. Really strong solar activity, solar storms, can even lead to we call them ground level enhancements, so more radiation on the ground, but in particular the magnetic field gets affected, and that induces currents into large grids like electricity grids. They can then fail, and we might be left without electricity, of course. That's to be avoided. That's why we want to be aware of what's coming. We want to try to protect and warn the infrastructure to get ready to reduce the effects as much as we can.
Okay. How do we plan to better improve our knowledge and forecasting of these events? Or do we have dedicated satellites for studying space weather?
We don't have many yet. Mm-hmm. What we do have is, of course, our science mission. We have Solar Orbiter. We collaborate internationally, Parker Solar Probe, to learn more about the sun. That will help us improve the modeling of the effects of the sun. And with that, we then want to go, of course, and improve the data we have on the current activity so that we can indeed help forecast what's going to come, and to improve that forecast, allow us some time to prepare to really mitigate the effects.
Until humans find ways to explore distant planets themselves, some millions of kilometers away from Earth, we'll need to rely on these experts to navigate our spacecraft and keep pushing space exploration forwards. For my part, I'll stick to a distance of 400 kilometers above Earth. The view is, well, not too bad at all.
It's incredible, but seems that we are really at the end of this test. It was a long test, 30 days. We had to work with the spacecraft every day, night and day. There were a lot of things that we were, I would not say not expecting, but we had to cope with. But everything was solved, and we didn't have any critical problem.
It's good to see it again.
We have learned a lot, and this is very interesting for us and for the mission. So yeah.
The spacecraft today is still in the chamber.
will be removed from the chamber. There will be inspection. Then it will be installed in the transport container. This takes some time because all the activities are very complex. And we will transport to Toulouse with an Antonov flight, and it shall arrive in Toulouse on the 10th of August.
I'm absolutely happy that we are on the road. It was again a long time of preparation, but in this case we have only 3 months. This was a shorter preparation time between start of the LSS and here in the moment when we drive to Cologne-Bonn airport with the JUICE spacecraft.
Well, it feels just great. It is a fantastic moment for us and for me as project manager to see JUICE finally arriving here in Toulouse, where the project will continue for a year. It is really fantastic. It is a moment we have been waiting for quite a lot of time, and we have been working very hard to prepare it. It feels really great. The journey of JUICE began first in Airbus Madrid, where we built the structure of the spacecraft. So at this stage it was still an empty box, and then it came to Germany, 2 different locations to completely build the spacecraft as it is today, and then in the Netherlands to perform the first test of the spacecraft before arriving here in Toulouse. It is the final stage of the development of JUICE before we go to Kourou to launch the spacecraft to Jupiter.
À tour de DDO, attention pour le décompte final. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, top!
We have missed the launch opportunity that we had in September this year. The key reasons are further delay of few instruments, or the latest instrument. A couple of problems on platform equipment, that we have to remove the platform equipment and repair them. And then the COVID. In 2021, the COVID was as difficult as in 2020, so we continually lose time because people was sick, people was not available, and so forth. So we missed the launch date. We didn't miss much, a couple of months, but if you miss the launch window, you are gone. And therefore we have now a new baseline, a backup launch date in 2023.
I work on JUICE since quite a long time, actually, since 16 years now, and I'm what we call the mission analysis lead. Mission analysis is, I would say, the art of computing and designing trajectories. So basically, as input, we have the science team that will come to us with objectives like visiting Ganymede, being at that altitude, or going to Europa, and these kind of things. And then we need to design a full trajectory answering all these scientific goals.
On JUICE, I was a PI for 10 years, so I have a direct understanding of what was really important for science. And I could talk to Arnaud and talk to the science team and tell them, okay, let's put together what are the basics, what are the three pillars. And we ended up with a high inclination phase, 2 flybys of Europa, and foremost, this circular orbit around Ganymede, at most at 500 km altitude.
When the mission was adopted in 2015, the launch date was planned for 2022, and it nearly never changed. And we had, I would say, a database of options for 2022, 23, 24, 25 that we established 10 years ago. And because we had that reference and everything looked very stable, we didn't make any further analysis. And then suddenly, a few months ago, the project understood that we couldn't make it in 2022. So we had urgently to find something new in 2023. In 23, we had 3 options, 1 in April and 2 in August. We didn't want to wait until August because it cost money. So we wanted to use the 1 in April. The drawback of the 1 in April that we had was that it was very long in terms of transfer time to Jupiter. But at the same time, Yves had done some analysis and came to us and said, on top of these options that we derived 10 years ago and that we use as reference, there might be another one that would live in April and that whose duration would be shorter than the one we have in the database.
Decided to look whether we could have something earlier. And this is where I found this idea of launching in the equator while it is close to the ecliptic, which is the orbit plane of the Earth, which is unusual. It's not part of the normal way of looking at opportunities. So it's not surprising it was not found, but the story doesn't stop at being able to say, hey, there is something which could work, because the devil can be in many, many, many details.
When you design a trajectory, there are essentially 2 main steps. The first one is what we call finding the first guess, which is, I don't know, I mean, you want to go from here, Darmstadt, and you want to go to Toulouse, you just put the main milestones to Toulouse. But then you have a second step, where we call that refinement, and you start zooming in and trying to see exactly where do you go. You put all the perturbations that you're going to have in the model for the dynamics, and you take all the effects into account, and you really start consolidating that.
I supported recently Arnaud in the process of the refined optimization of the new launch window. In this process, I basically help him refine the actual trajectory and verify that his initial guess, so this kind of structure of the transfer, was actually feasible under all the different constraints that we have from project, from scientists and so on.
My idea was not enough. It really needed a lot of consolidation. As Giuseppe Sarri was saying, I proposed the idea and Arnaud and his team made it real. And the official validation of a launch opportunity that has to be done by ESA because ESA is in charge of the project.
We have now a launch date in April 23 with a window of opening on the 5th of April and closing on the 25th of April.
Prenez la deuxième sortie.
For me, the car is the moment where you're alone, can put the music at low volume and sing let yourself go. Maybe it's part of the setting, I don't know. Oh, I have to go here, wait.
Restez à droite.
We started coming to Toulouse as soon as we kicked off the contract with Airbus. So every year we're coming a few times already. And apart from the pause with the COVID, about 2 years we did only remotely. And now we started coming more often because now the spacecraft is in the final phase of integration. We start with the test campaign. And now this is already the 3rd week that I'm coming in a row because I'm following up with the preparation for the electromagnetic compatibility test. So with some colleagues, we are working a shift. So we have to be here to follow the test.
Today is a very important day for many reasons. First, we are on the 5th of April today, so we are exactly 1 year to launch. We will launch next year in 365 days from Ariane 5 in Kourou, so that's a very important milestone for us. And it is also the start, actually we started yesterday, of a very important test for the spacecraft, which is the radiated EMC test. So basically we have assembled everything on the spacecraft over the last months, and we start again a new test sequence for the next months until shipment of the spacecraft to Kourou. We have done many things since arrival of the spacecraft in August last year, and in particular we had to reopen completely the spacecraft to remove a couple of pieces of equipment that were in anomaly or sometimes even in failure that we have discovered in the thermal vacuum test at ESTEC last summer. And so a lot of things to be removed, repaired and installed again on the spacecraft. And of course all the instruments, flight models that we were missing last summer have been installed over fall and winter last year to be now in full flight configuration for this test that we are started now.
It's a new place for our spacecraft also. So here in Toulouse they are really used to have a lot of different spacecraft, especially for telecom satellites. So JUICE is a bit different because it's a science mission, interplanetary science mission. So also we had to adapt the different processes. So they have of course a kind of a serial production for telecom. So this is different from the single model that we build, because of course JUICE will be only one protoflight model. So some difference, something to be adapted, something to be learned, and something also to share, and different approaches to be merged together to have the best that we can really continue on this mission.
Here we have our Jupiter Ice Moon Explorer that is ready to go through the so-called electromagnetic compatibility test. So we want to make sure that when we'll be on his journey to Jupiter and doing science around Jupiter, everything will work properly. So that means that when all the electronic units will be working, they are working all without interfering one with the other, and they will work as expected and within the requested performances, both the units of the platform and all the 10 instruments that are on board of the spacecraft. So this is a test that will last approximately 4 weeks, and because there are many modes, many aspects that we want to test. So we want to verify that the spacecraft does not interfere with the launcher or the launcher facilities, and likewise we want to verify that the emission, electromagnetic emission of the launcher and the launcher facilities do not interfere with the proper functioning of the spacecraft. This is one phase. Another phase, for example, which actually we will test tomorrow, is to make sure that you can see this launch that will emit quite of an intense burst of signals to explore the depth of the icy moons. And we want to make sure that when this sounder is working, does not interfere with the proper functioning of all the other units of the spacecraft. This is one of the most exciting phases of the program, if you want, because now we start with a real testing campaign. So now we have the electromagnetic compatibility campaign, then we will have the mechanical test, the acoustic test, then we will have a thermal test, and then we will finish the integration, and then we will be ready to ship for launch campaign. So it's really intense. It will be a long year, as we are almost at 1 year to launch, so it will be a very intense year of campaign, but I mean, let's see, it's our silver beauty.
Here we are in MVS facility. Here the goal is to recreate the vibrations and the noise that will occur during the launch of JUICE.
For this particular test, we have particular attention of the dynamic behavior of the spacecraft, because for the time being we have built some mathematical model, and we verify that the spacecraft reply as per predicted by the mathematical model. Then we verify that the response of the spacecraft is within the range we have specified and qualified at subsystem level. For the time being, since we have vibrated the Y axis and we are currently vibrating the X axis, we have a good understanding of the spacecraft behavior. We are very satisfied with its behavior, which is quieter than expected initially by our mathematical model calculation. And according